Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Market Snapshot series. My name is Rufas Kamau, Markets Analyst at FX Pesa. So today we have a nice day ahead of us. Yesterday, we encountered very low volatility in the markets as a result of a host of bank holidays that were happening across Europe as well as the US. So for the US, it was the Memorial Day, it was the Pentecostal Day across the European continent, and of course, we had a summer holiday in the UK. So all these resulted in very low volatility, but today we are already seeing the market start to spike, and now we have some volatility coming into the markets, which basically represents trading opportunities. So hello, Trapscade, Mr. Rizzi, welcome to the session. So without wasting much time, let's begin by focusing on the economic calendar and seeing what we are expecting as the announcements for the day. So clearly, a majority of the news that we're expecting have already been announced, right from building consents in New Zealand, which came in lower than expected at negative 2.6%. BRC shop price index in the UK, which came in higher at 9%. Unemployment rate in Japan at 2.6%, meaning that the Japanese economy is quite resilient. Building approvals for Australia also went down, similar to New Zealand, negative 8.1%. Then we have the Swiss GDP, which improved to 0.3%. KOF economic barometer for the Switzerland or the Swiss economy was at 90.2, a little bit lower than the previous one and also lower than the forecast. Then we had the Spanish CPI, which came in weaker than expected, which was good. You want to see prices normalizing. M3 money supply up 1.9%, missed expectations for the Eurozone. Then private loans year over year were up 2.5%, which is basically slower than expected. So all these are not high impact news. I believe the only high impact news we're expecting for the day will be happening at 5 p.m. when you look at the CB consumer confidence data for the US, and these will indicate the optimism among US consumers. So if consumer confidence is higher, then we expect stronger spending over the next couple of weeks, and that would be quite positive for the US economy. So later on at 2 a.m., we'll be having a speech from RBA Governor Ueda. This will be at 2 a.m. Then later on, industrial production and retail sales for Japan, before we look at the CPI at 4:30 a.m. tomorrow. And this is Australian CPI or Australian inflation data. Then early in the morning, we look at a host of Chinese data, that is both manufacturing PMI as well as non-manufacturing PMI. And before we even get to tomorrow's session, we also be seeing German import prices data. And of course, the preliminary CPI for the German economy, retail sales for Switzerland, then French consumer spending, preliminary CPI, French preliminary GDP, and also German employment change, all these happening before tomorrow's session. So by the time we get to 11 a.m., this is when we'll be having the Credit Suisse economic expectations, ECB financial stability review, and also Italian preliminary CPI, as well as Canadian GDP data in the day. So today seems like more or less like a technical price action paradise. This is when you don't expect a lot of news to be happening in the markets. So you're purely focused on the technicals currently happening on your charts. So fundamentally, there's also the issue of the US debt ceiling, which I mentioned yesterday that the US President Biden was able to agree with the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. So with that being in agreement, we are waiting for them to push the bill through Congress. And once the voting is done, then the debt ceiling will be lifted for another 2 years. So when this happens, then there's an expectation that with the strong US economic data coming along, there's a good chance that the Fed or Jerome Powell will hike interest rates by another 25 basis points on the next meeting, which is set for 14th of June, which is next month. So next month basically starts a day from tomorrow. And also I would like to mention that On Madaraka Day, which is the 1st of June, FX Pesa platform will be fully operational. Markets will be fully open. Madaraka Day is a local holiday, it's not international, so it doesn't affect markets in any way. So feel free to participate in the market during the holiday. So that being said, there's quite a number of key technical price action patterns that have been following. First one is that there was a major sell-off of the EU 50 index. So kept going down for the entire day yesterday. But today, we have a very important candlestick here, the long black candlestick. It's called a dragonfly doji. It basically represents a very strong rejection of lower prices and indicates an entry by buyers. So there is a good chance we'll be seeing the EU 50 rally back to previous high, which was yesterday's high price action. So there is a good chance we could be seeing this playing out today, judging by what we have seen with the strong rejection here. So it's the same thing with the UK 100, but the candlestick did not manage to close higher than expected. Also notice that while the EU 500 was going down yesterday, the UK 100 was making a rally, but also this is quite significant. If you go to the 30 minutes, then you notice there was a strong momentum downwards, which was rejected immediately, which means that there's a good chance we could be seeing some further upside happening in the FTSE 100 index. So 76.89 seems like a nice target. So besides that, we mentioned that we had a nice triangle happening on the chart of gold. So for 3 straight days, gold was just trading sideways without a clear momentum. Then early this morning, there was a very strong break towards the lower side, which was later faced by movement in the opposite direction. And as we always say, whenever there's a breakout, then you watch out for the retest. So it seems like we have a retest here. So market goes down, then goes all the way back to the breaking point, and now we are at the retest point. So the idea is to look for signs of bearish entry. And if that happens, then we could be able to trade this further back downwards. But if that doesn't happen, then we could also be on the lookout for further bullish momentum. Maybe this was a fake out to the lower side and then the market goes up. So this is the area to observe the price. If there is a strong entry by sellers along this trend line, then we basically trade downwards in continuation of the direction of the break. So that's one. Also notice the candlestick that is forming on the 4-hour chart. So this will also be very important, especially if it forms like that. So when we happen to see that candlestick form like that, then that would be indicative of a strong rejection of lower prices, and we should be looking to trade higher. So it really depends on what happens in the next 1 hour as an indication of the direction that the price of gold will take. So we could be seeing gold rally back to 1983, but we are not sure. So we just wait and see if there's a strong rejection of this area. So if there's a rejection, we go down. If there's a break, then we keep going higher. So for USD, I mentioned yesterday that we don't have much happening here. So there was low volatility. I don't think the volatility has resumed. So I would say that the market is still trading within a range. So we don't have a proper direction to identify trading opportunities. But of course, the key price levels have to be along these two trend lines. So if we happen to see a break of either of the two trend lines, then that would mean something. But for now, the price seems to be rangy between the two trend lines. So for USD JPY, we are seeing a very strong rejection of higher prices, which basically implies a double top. So we all know what a double top is. So if I remove all this noise and just plot the high yesterday and the high today, you can see the market going up the first time, back down, and then retesting the area again and moving further back downwards. So this implies that the market is unable to form higher highs, and it's a sign of weakness in the trend. So there is a good chance we'll be seeing the Japanese yen start to strengthen against the US dollar. So on that note and on that account, it's very important I show you an update that happened earlier this morning affecting the Japanese yen. So the Bank of Japan Ministry of Finance and the Financial Securities Authority in Japan, officials are to hold an emergency meeting. So when this was announced, this is when we saw the Japanese yen start to strengthen early this morning. So BOJ's Governor Ueda basically said that I predict that inflation would begin to fall sharply towards the middle of full year 2023. So if inflation is falling in Japan, that's bad. Remember, they have been fighting deflation for quite a number of decades. So if inflation is not sustainable, then the Bank of Japan may have to continue with the yield curve control program and also quantitative easing, which would be quite negative for the Japanese yen. So fundamentally, the Japanese yen is still weak, but if this emergency meeting brings something out or something else that maybe leads to a change in monetary policy, then in that case, we could be seeing the Japanese yen start to strengthen. Else, we could be seeing the Japanese yen continue being weak. So while we are looking at the chart here, there is a good chance we'll be seeing a continuation of the same until something changes fundamentally. So for USD CAD, I think these are a good time to demonstrate the triangle that we had discussed some time back here. So market breaks out of the triangle, retests and rallies all the way to resistance and then goes back down. So from here, what we are seeing here is a market that has maintained some price action within a triangle. So if I was to use the 15-minute chart and zoom out, sorry, not a triangle, but a channel. So we seem to be having some form of channel that resembles what I would describe as a flag. So this market has been trading inside this flag for the last 2 days. That is Friday and Monday, and now we're in Tuesday. So this is the third day we are trading inside that flag. So ever since the market got to this resistance, I would say this was the leg. So if we adjust this into a flagpole, then this is our flag. And of course, we trade flags based on the breakouts. So in this case, we could be looking for a breakout in either direction, and that would create a trading opportunity for us. So on the 1 hour chart, this is how it looks like. So our flagpole, the flag, and now we wait for the breakout direction. So Euro USD seems to be extremely bearish today. So having bounced several times from the upper trend line, also this morning it retested the same trend line. And what we are seeing here is some further downside momentum followed by a rejection of lower prices. So while the upside potential remains limited, the downside seems to be continuing just as well. So whenever the market goes up and gets to the upper trend line, we find resistance and the market goes back down. But when the market goes down, we continue trading along that direction. So the euro seems to be consistently losing to the US dollar. So from the 1 hour chart, if you look at the last 1 hour, there seems to be some form of rejection, but I wouldn't particularly trade this as a rejection of lower prices because the price has actually maintained this resistance level here. And whenever we get close to this, the only thing we are seeing in the market is further downside prices. So a key indicator would be the dollar index, which seemingly is rising higher and higher. So if you use the 4 hour chart, then you can see for 3 straight weeks, it has been just moving upwards. And this week, particularly, yesterday moved down and then made a recovery. And today, it's moving even higher. So despite the last candlestick indicating some rejection of higher prices, there's still some momentum indicating that we could see the dollar index moving even higher for the day. So a higher dollar index would mean pound USD keeps going down, and New Zealand USD keeps going down, and of course, Euro USD keeps going down. So for pound USD, you can already see what is happening here. So if I remove all this noise, then you can all tell that this is a resistance that's holding quite well, and this is a support that is holding quite well, eventually basically forming a triangle. And of course, whenever you have such a triangle, it screams consolidation, a market with no direction. So there is indifference in this market for the last couple of days. So the general price movement is sideways. So we wait for a direction, which is basically a breakout on either side. So if the breakout is on the upper side, we go for bullish positions. If it's on the lower side, then we basically go for bearish positions. So that's it for today. And of course, I forgot to mention that this is not investment advice, neither is it a recommendation to trade. So hello, Kevin, Patrick, awesome. So you guys are trading together, Kevin and J Squad. So a rising wedge in euro, how do we trade? Wait for the breakout. Good morning, Rodney. How can one trade this high impact news? Just be patient. First of all, understand what we are expecting. For instance, the most anticipated news for the week will be the non-farm payrolls on Friday. Of course, we all know about that, but for today, we just wait for the consumer sentiment data. And once we get the announcement, then we'll see the market taking a direction, especially when we are having all these kinds of consolidations, markets moving sideways. Some good news will be much better fuel to give a direction in the markets. So there was a request on USD JPY. I think I already covered that. And for USD JPY, you can see we are almost seeing a double top pattern here. So with a double top kind of formation, the market rejecting this high yet again, then it basically means that you observe the lower side for signs of a break. So this is one of the areas to observe. And of course, if you are to get a double top, then the neckline would be right here. So if the price was to drop down to this area here, then it would complete our double top pattern. And in that case, we would have an idea of where to go. So just to give an indication, this would be our movement up and then down and then up and then back down. So in that case, we would be looking to trade after the completion of the pattern, not before the completion of the pattern. Yeah, good question here. Analysis on Oanda, just switch to FXPesa. You won't have any of these problems. So Euro USD and GU, we have already covered that. We have checked on gold. You can simply use the MT5 to do the same kind of analysis. So how far down do we expect the Euro USD to go? So that's a good question. So if you are to use the lower trend line, then it's way much lower. So a projection using the lower trend line would probably see us dropping somewhere around this area, 1.062. And this is a conservative measure. So it's actually lower. If this trend was to continue, then 1.058. So there's a good chance we could be seeing the Euro USD dropping all the way down to this area. All right, guys, thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate this. So if you missed something on gold, Euro USD, USD, and we have already covered that. The video is live on YouTube, so you can always review it later after we end it. So it's available immediately. You can go through the video again, just in case you missed something, and hope to see you guys again later on in the day at 4 p.m. So we will be having a session. It's called the Markets at a Glance series. So just before the US market open, we'll try to understand the price levels again and see what to expect for the rest of the day. So thanks, guys. See you then.